I missed our last report, and it's for a good reason-ish. Ah, man, I love these chairs. All right. Yeah, I kind of got caught up in something, and I think I mentioned last time the whole beats, trying to understand beats, thinking about building an application that structures them together. Well, I missed last time because I went down that rabbit hole, and what a nice rabbit hole that is. I started building a web application that would let me organize and structure the beats of my story so that I could better understand what was happening in my story. And I've read some stuff that says, don't worry about that stuff until you've written something and it's good, and then you can go in and kind of like fine tune it. That makes sense. You've got this energy about building out a story, and you don't want to get down to the details too quickly. It's kind of, for me, like writing software where I've got this idea of how I want to do it. It's like, don't worry about writing unit tests. It's like, I'm getting technical. I need to not do this. It's like you need to not worry about the details of doing it just show your idea in action. And that is exactly what I think you've got to do as a storyteller up front. But I did that with touch. Initially, I just wrote it. The first 2 episodes, I just wrote them. And I think that maybe I want the structure bit a little bit more because I'm so used to writing software and thinking in terms of annotating how things relate, making sure that the structural content is strong, and then polishing off the rest. I think this is how I want to work. I'm really resonating with it. Anyway, I started building this little application that will let me structure these things. And as I'm going through and experimenting with actually breaking down that first episode, and also thinking about the idea is it starts at the big picture, like the whole show, and then you work your way down to seasons and episodes and acts and sequences and scenes, and then the actual beats of the scene, and you go all the way down. I've been fleshing it out from both the angles, and the tool's not really feature complete. There's some you can't really use it yet beyond just kind of visualizing, but I'm going to show you what I'm doing so far and talk about some of the things that I've discovered from a storytelling perspective, the things that I feel like I have in my current script, the deficiencies, probably mostly deficiencies that I've found in my current script using this visualization tool. Maybe there's some strengths. I think most of the things I feel good about are things that I've noticed and then tried to fix. And my goal is to go through and build out the structure for this entire thing, or at least the high level. I want the entire thing for the high level of the entire show. It's looking like I'm only kind of thinking of 4 seasons right now instead of the 5 initially specified, which is okay. That's fine. But once I have that kind of high level structure in place and I can start plugging in the details all the way down for a single episode, then I can actually write that episode, and the bones are there. I'm not trying to create what the beast is while I'm finishing out the fine detail of its flesh and its hair and what kinds of clothes it wears and how it behaves. Like, I can focus on just the fine detail after I've got the bones figured out. So that's the whole concept. All right, so let's see here. I need to get my screen recorder launched. All right, so I was showing Jefferson and Darce some of this. I haven't seen this latest, but I was showing them some of this earlier, and I was to a point where the visualization was that good, and so I was actually showing them the XML markup that I use to store this format. I think I'm going to spare this audience that view because it's a little nerdy. But I'm not going to promise I won't jump over there if there's something I can't explain. So this is my little tool. The idea is that beats exist at every level of the story structure. And you need to build out those beats and make sure they are strong. They must have an inciting incident. They must have a progressive complication. They must have a crisis question. They must have a climax and a, resolution, right? Okay, and the progressive complication, it can actually be more than one. Like, it gets worse, and then it gets even worse, and then it gets so bad that there's just no hiding from this question. That's kind of what you want each of these to do, is like really push your character to make a choice. That crisis question should not be optional. They are picking A or B, and it's a critical choice that they're making. The idea here is that I can slide back and forth between just across the, I guess, the timeline of this thing. So you can see up here I've got touch. This is the top level. This is the show level. Then there's the season. And if I scroll past all the content inside that season, you can see that season 2, season 3, season 4, I have season 5 listed there, but I don't know what it is. And I haven't really broken down these other seasons into actual beats yet. I just kind of did some brainstorming and just pasted it in. And I still need to go back and flesh it out. I can put my content there, scroll around, see what it is, to help me remember my thought process and build out stronger beats. So the season 1 breaks down into episodes. I spec'd 8 episodes originally. So I have episode 101, there's a name for it, episode 102, episode 103, episode 104. Those all have names. These guys don't have names. One of the things I can't do right now is go in and actually edit my title. I can highlight it. Oh, and I just showed you another feature. I can actually, so what I just did there, I can actually collapse the children. So here you can see that I have touch and the seasons listed, and that's it. I can scroll them around. And this little bar on the right is just a place for me to be able to add an inspector panel someday, but I don't have it yet because I haven't written it. There's a little menu that pops up, and I can select import and export. I have not had a designer go over this, and I suck at design. So it'll get a lot better if we decide to turn it into something. But the idea here is really just to focus on giving me the features I need to write this story. And if that works well, then we'll think, okay, we got something cool here. Let's clean it up and maybe share it. Anyway, so I have season 1 here, detected. If I click this button down here, I can expand that back out. It's not expanding everything that you saw previously, it's just expanding that next level, so I see all 8 episodes. The only thing that I've done any work on is episode 101. It's not even all represented there. And that of that, only the first act. Inside the first act, I only have these 2 sequences, normal world, which I've built out, and then Kent learns the truth. I'm not going to talk about that because I haven't really thought about it a lot. I just kind of stuck it there. But this normal world is the whole, the Stork family lives a normal life in a normal world dealing with normal problems. I'm not saying that's a good inciting incident, but that's kind of how the story starts. And then there's some progressive complications. This is what I got right now. Yeah, I don't really know how to write these at the act level. So I've got this idea that Travis and his dad are both kind of headstrong. They're focused on, like, we do things and not paying a lot of, they're taking responsibility but not really respecting other people. And then the women are very much so respectful and concerned about that, but sometimes struggle with asserting themselves when they should, taking responsibility. So that's kind of what I'm trying to capture in this progressive complication. To me, that's not a good example. I don't like it yet, and I need to think about what it is at this sequence level. Anyway, so I can expand this guy out, and now I've got my normal world sequence broken down into scenes. I've got my campfire scene, and the Travis softens scene, and Kent finishes a meeting scene. That's just typed into my XML, so there's no spell check. And then my campfire has been broken down to, okay, the campfire is a sequence. Oh, sorry. Campfire is a sequence. These are my scenes. Travis pushes tag is the first scene. Travis makes Emily it is the second scene in the campfire sequence. That's what this is saying. So this is starting to get down to more detail level. And that's That's where the fun starts to really happen. But I've been having fun all the way up and down the stack, and I'm really excited to be able to actually use this tool to write, because right now I've been typing all this stuff in XML, and it's helpful, but it's not nearly as fun. And I've got all sorts of ideas for additional features. Like, I think that there's cases where you have beats that mirror each other, like maybe they have the same theme or some similarity. It'd be really cool to be able to link those together some way so that when you select one, you can see here's a linked beat and it's linked because of this thing. And I really like stories where like there's these recurring themes, and I don't know. It's like, I like it when it's really well thought out, and like every angle you take on that story as you process this thing you've just experienced, it's like, wow, there's something deep there. I think that's intentional, and I think that's by building out a strong structure to the story. The bones are strong. Anyway, Travis pushes tag, breaks down into, what? That doesn't look right. Oh, you know what I did? I created a new sub thing under Travis pushes tag, but Travis pushes tag is the bottom, so I'll just pretend I didn't do that. Anyway, Travis hangs out with his sister and friends after school. Travis is bored. This is the inciting incident. This is what starts it all off. Progressive complication. They can't agree what to do, and then they remember they have limited time. So we got to figure something out, or we're going to waste our time. Crisis question for Travis is, can Travis wait for something everyone wants to do? Or Travis can wait for someone everyone wants to. I should pose this as a question better. Should Travis wait for something everyone wants to do but waste time, or push for what he wants while frustrating the others? This is the question he's confronted with. And I think the climax comes when he answers that question. Travis actually chooses the latter. He chooses to push the others to play hide and go seek tag, even though they're not really all that stoked about it. And then the resolution is everybody agrees, but at some emotional cost. None of these feel like oh my goodness, I really nailed this beat and how I captured it, but it's a start and I'm starting to think about it. And I want to jump to this next section here. So Travis then makes Emily be it. It's kind of a repeat. These two beats kind of are Travis taking responsibility to make something happen, but not being respectful of the other people. And so he's spending this goodwill that they have. He's using it up. So then we get over here to this Travis softens scene. And the two beats there are Travis loses. Travis wants to have fun playing tag, but relationships get in the way. That's more of a summary than an inciting incident, but I don't know what it should be. The progressive complication, Walker wants to hide with Travis, foiling his plans. Walker tries to hide with him. Travis wants to win. Oops, now he's in trouble. Maybe we should have something in here about Travis wanting to win. Travis ditches Walker to be alone, but ends up with Sage. So Travis tries to ditch Walker, but progressive complication. Oops, he hides with Sage, and the count is up. I should probably put that comment in here. So he can't relocate. Awkward. Look at that. The third thing that happens is that Sage and Travis share an awkward romantic moment, and he likes it. This is a complication, though, for his wanting to win tag. Sage notices Travis's treatment of Walker to soften the awkwardness. What I mean there is that she saw what happened with Walker, and so she mentions it to Travis as, hey, let's talk about this thing, rather than having this weird awkward moment. So Travis suddenly finds himself in a crisis situation, I think, because he can lean into the surprise romance but feel more awkwardness, because this is kind of a new first-time thing for him. He's a young kid. Or he can lean into his frustration at Walker and avoid dealing with his emotions. I should say emotions. I can't type very well, apparently, but miss out on the special moment. So, man, there's a lot of misspellings in there. So the idea, though, is I think there's some strong content here. I just haven't necessarily captured it well. But Travis is actually forced into this situation where he's not deciding, he's not really getting upset at Walker because Walker messed up his game. He's getting upset because he had this little romantic moment and he screwed it up because he didn't have the nerve to lean into it. I think that's what really happens. So the climax, Travis avoids his new feelings and doubles down on his frustration at Walker. He kind of hangs on to that Walker thing. And the resolution is Walker wins the game. Travis misses out on winning the game and the girl. I don't know if I want to say it that way, but that's kind of what happens. You know, he could have the beginning of some kind of special relationship with Sage, but instead he basically continues to focus on his frustration at Walker, which makes him look immature, and puts us up in this next beat here. Travis is angry because he lost the game and the girl. That's how this whole thing starts off. When he gets back to base, he's upset because he lost the game and he lost the girl. Progressive complication, he's really angry at himself, so it doesn't help when he tries to blame Walker, which he does. He tries to blame Walker. Walker tries to defend himself. Travis just keeps going because it's not really about Walker, but Walker's getting the heat. Next thing up, Travis calls on Sage to support his decision, but she's disappointed in his choice too. And there's the whole thing where Sage is like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, why are you looking at me? Emily becomes angry at Travis when he continues to dump on Walker and gives him the ultimatum of being nice or not playing. So getting tight for Travis here. He's losing everything. Now he's not even going to get to play with his friends and his sister. Travis notices Sage is clearly uncomfortable with his behavior and is withdrawing. So now it's like he can see, because of her body language, that she's not cool with him. Travis tries to regain control by force. This is his whole arguing with Emily and trying to say what he thinks is right about his behavior and what's wrong about Walker's. But it just makes matters worse. Travis fears being treated as a child when Sage's mom steps outside and asks about what's happening. So I actually feel like, I don't know that I captured it well here. Like, maybe talking about it is stronger than what I actually wrote. So I can strengthen this. But I feel like what I originally wrote actually works out to be some really good progressive complication, because a kid who's fighting with other kids and all the other kids know he's in the wrong, and an adult shows up on scene who has authority over them, and suddenly they feel incredibly vulnerable. So Travis is feeling really vulnerable right now. He can no longer, well, I shouldn't say he can no longer, he can, but the stakes of just the risk of trying to continue to assert that he's right has gotten so high, because now if Mrs. Fernsby needs to get involved and he continues to argue his point, the other children are opposed, are on the other side from him. I don't know if they would all speak up, but they're not on his side. And Emily and Walker at least would. And Mrs. Fernsby's probably not going to be on his side either. And if he ends up getting disciplined from adult, well, holy cow, that's embarrassing in front of somebody you like. Anyway, so the crisis question that Travis has to deal with is, should Travis accept defeat and apologize to Walker to avoid a confrontation with Mrs. Fernsby and losing face, or should he continue to assert his strength in hopes of regaining his control and dignity? So in his mind, the only way he can save face is if he wins this thing. But he can lose more face if he tries to fight with Mrs. Fernsby and loses. So what is he going to do? Well, Travis admits he's wrong. It pushes him to the brink, and he recognizes that he's not going to win, frankly. This is not a turn because suddenly he becomes a different person or a better person. It's a turn because he is left with no good options and has the wisdom to recognize that he has a bad option and a worse option. So the climax, Travis admits he's wrong and apologizes. He acknowledges that he's actually angry at himself. This little piece here, I think, probably needs to be fleshed out, but acknowledging that he's actually angry at himself is a really mature thing to do. I think that I want him to do that in that moment, and maybe he kind of stumbles upon that as well. Maybe it can tell a little bit about who he is as a person, that once he gets off of his "I'm just determined to be right" thing, he can actually self-reflect pretty well, and he does that here, and is a little bit vulnerable, and admits that he's angry at himself. Now, I don't know that he says why he's angry at himself. I think that's something I'll figure out when I actually write the scene, right? Does he overtly say that? Does Sage understand it? Does Sage go, well, she doesn't do it, but does she recognize that he's admitting that he lost something in that exchange and that it might be about her? I don't know. It'd be fun to play with that. So the resolution is that Travis discovers that his act of humility ultimately gains him back influence and respect. So that's how the whole scene ends currently in the script, where they're all like, yep, nope, psych, and doing their little thing. I feel like it's a little trite the way it plays out right now, and my hope is that with some of these story bones figured out a little bit better, that we can strengthen that and the resolution doesn't feel as out of place. I might need to hint somehow at the idea that Travis has this maturity. I don't know. Maybe it'll work. But Travis discovers that his act of humility ultimately gains him back influence and respect, and Sage notices and appreciates Travis's mature turn. So that's exciting to me because I had never really considered the possibility that Travis was actually upset with himself. I had not considered that in the writing previously, or the storyboarding, or the spreadsheeting, or any of it. I shouldn't say that. I could have thought of it before perhaps and forgotten it. But it wasn't until now that it stuck, and I was like, okay, I really like the idea that Travis isn't just this like ultra mega jerk that blows up at little kids for no reason. Like, Travis is actually generally a nice guy. He's enthusiastic. He has a lust for life and adventure. He wants to live big and have fun. And he got caught up in the moment. Maybe he ditched Walker. That felt like a smaller thing. Maybe he ditched Walker because he was just wanting to win, and so he ran off. But then the whole thing with Sage happened, and it's like it was a completely different game for him. It was not about winning anymore, winning the game anymore. It was about winning in this little moment that they share. Anyway, I feel like there's a lot to figure out. Every time I sit down to crunch on extracting the beats from the existing story, I think about the high-level beats. I find myself every time thinking, my story really sucks. And I think that's true on paper. I think the story that I've told does suck. It's weak. It doesn't have the strength that it doesn't have the strength on the page that it has in my mind, in my soul. The story that I have is rich. It's poignant. It draws me in. It excites me. It makes me want to write. It makes me want to watch it someday. But the story that's ending up on the page isn't doing that. Well, why is that? I think it's because I am weaving together a yarn that my mind is just magically filling in details for. So the picture in my head has details that make it feel really good to me, even though I'm not really focusing on those details that make it good. And without noticing those details that I add in my mind, I can't turn them towards on a page. I can't actually write them and share them with another person. And I really think that the StoryBones concept is another way to push me to ask questions about the story and to notice relationships and notice details and associations that I wouldn't otherwise. And I don't think that having a strong core necessarily means the story is going to sell well Like it's not gonna, and I don't mean like sell to somebody for money, although that might happen, but I mean like somebody's gonna read it and be compelled by it. I think there's other places you can mess it up, but I feel like has the ability to strengthen it, to add depth and dimension to it. One last comparison. When I was a kid, I used to read books. I don't really read much anymore. I read fiction, a little bit of fiction, and I really enjoyed fiction books as a kid. And some of those books I later saw made into movies, and I watched those movies, and I was incredibly disappointed. You know, everybody's had these experiences. And I thought about that for the years since then. Well, why is it that you can make a movie from such a good book that just doesn't feel right? Well, there's a lot of things that go into that. Different people view things differently. A movie is a different medium. I get that all. But I really think that part of it is that a book has no pictures. I mean, that they might be little illustrations, but the book itself, the content itself, is just words. It's descriptions. And when we read those words, we actually build that world in our heads. And our minds fill in far more than the book specifies. And every person fills in those details differently. And when somebody has to build a world for a movie based on a book, it's a person or a team of people that are tapping into that concept. And I'm guessing it's not just a matter of, oh, this is what's in my head, so that's what we're going to build. There's a process of discussion and working it out, and what's practical and what's not, and what's consistent with the book. But ultimately what they end up with, via whatever path they take, is different than what I ended up with. And I think it's those little trappings, those little details, and it's not just the details of the environment, it's the details of the characters, it's the details of the emotion, it's all of that stuff that our minds fill in the details for, that makes it feel real, that brings it extra meaning. And that's the magic of writing a good book, is setting up a story that invites us to do that. But I think that's ultimately the thing that makes it hard to capture a movie. I think that same thing happens, though, when we're writing, and I think that's what I'm realizing has happened for me, that I have this thing in my head that's filled with magic, but am I capturing the things in my script that will invite the reader or the director to fill in those details that actually make it magic? I think that so far, for the most part, the answer is no, I haven't been. And I feel energized that using this story beat process, the StoryBones process, and tool, that it can help me flesh that out better, so that I'm really sure that I'm asking and answering the questions that matter most for the larger structural aspect of the story. Anyway, that's all I've got right now. I'm going to continue working on this over the holidays. I'm still working, so this isn't like a full-time thing, but here and there I'll grab an hour to add details. I'm really trying to get to the place where I can essentially fully edit this thing, even if I can't like move things around yet or delete things, or there's a lot of extra features that I need to add. But if I can just do the basic stuff and then download a file so that I can save it, I think that's enough that I can actually start using this for editing, not just for visualizing. And I'm excited about that. At some point I'll put this up on the web in some form so that I can collaborate with Darce and Jefferson. It's occurred to me that if anybody else came across this, perhaps someday, somewhere, somebody will come across it. If you're interested, drop me a line, comments. I don't know how you do it. I'm not a YouTube guy other than this channel. And let me know if we decide to use this in a larger context or make it available to the public. Maybe we'll do a beta, and if you're interested, we can add you to that. Anyway, that's pretty much, wow, I'm actually noticing a little bug right there. Visualization. That touch area should be appearing to slide off. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm going to keep working and try to get back to the weekly basis, but you know, I guess it's okay to skip it and focus on the story every now and then. So I'm going to forgive myself. Thanks for tuning in, Bootstrap Cinema, where we don't know what we're doing, but we have a good time trying to do it anyway. Au revoir.